Welcome to the Personal Development Mastery Podcast. I'm 𝗁𝗃𝗶𝗪 and my mission is to inspire you to rise up, grow, stand out, and take action towards the next level of your life. I interview leaders, influencers, entrepreneurs, authors, exceptional people who can and will inspire you to improve your life. Tune in for 2 episodes each week and make sure you subscribe to the podcast to get the episodes as soon as they are released. In today's show, it is my real pleasure to speak with David Wood. David, you are a former consulting actuary to Fortune 100 companies who left his comfortable Park Avenue job 20 years ago to build the world's largest coaching business, rank number 1 on Google for life coaching, while serving an audience of 150,000 coaches across 12 countries. You are also a fellow podcast host with your Tough Conversations podcast, having had some exceptional guests like Byron Katie, John Gray, and Jack Canfield. You coach high-performing business owners to double their revenue and time by focusing on less and being 30% more courageous in their business or career. And you promise that the listener will leave this podcast interview inspired to be 30% more courageous. David, what a delight it is to be speaking with you today.
Thank you, 𝗁𝗃𝗶𝗪. I'm glad to meet you. And 30% more courageous is a game changer. That can make a big difference to our lives.
It certainly is, and I love this bold promise at the beginning of the of the podcast. David, you have a fascinating story, and I want to start by asking you to pick one or maybe 2 pivotal moments during your life journey that have, as you say, constructed David Wood, that had made you become the person that you are.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the first one that comes to mind is when I was 7 years old. So I was 7, I was coming home from school with my little sister, and no one was really watching what she did. And somehow she ended up getting hit by the school bus, and she died that day. So that morning I had a little sister. That afternoon I didn't, and we didn't even talk about it in our family because people didn't know how to talk about grief or loss. So I just grew up with almost like a piece of me missing, and it seemed what happened. And I didn't know this until years later when I went to therapy, but I discovered how to be very left-brained. And apparently a lot of trauma victims learn how to be very cerebral. And so I would skip emotions and just go to solutions. Now, that was very useful for business. So I came top of my school, and I was really good at math. So I went into actuarial studies, and I got good consulting to Fortune 100 companies like Sony and Ford and Exxon. And I thought, hey, I've got it made. Here I am. I'm 25 years old. I'm in Park Avenue. I've got an office. I'm going and consulting to these huge companies, and I'm really good at what I do. But then the second pivotal moment was when I did a personal growth course, and I changed somebody's life overnight. We were sitting in the car. She'd just given me a ride home, and I was about to say goodnight. This was a participant in the workshop, and I coached her and found out that she'd had a secret for 10 years. Her husband had an affair 10 years earlier, and she'd been using that information to manipulate him and keep him under control for 10 years. But she'd also had an affair 10 years earlier, but she hadn't revealed that piece of information to him. And I watched her screw up her courage with tears streaming down her face and look at what it might be like to go and confess and risk her entire marriage. And they had little kids as well. She's going to put that on the line for authenticity. She was going to put that on the line for true love. And she went and she made the confession to him, And she came back and reported to the whole group that they felt like they were floating on air 6 feet above the ground the whole weekend, fully in love for the first time in 10 years. And I was hooked. I'm like, this stuff is great. I've been helping people with business and numbers and systems. Now I want to help people with emotional intimacy, with vulnerability, with communication, with leadership, with influence. So the first half of my life was all about left brain and numbers and systems. And the second half of my life seems to have been around connection, true love, including love for oneself. So I'm a rare coach. When people come to me, they don't come to me for one or the other. They don't want just more money, but they also don't want just to have better relationships. They want me to look at the whole person and we have their entire life get better.
That's amazing. And yeah, the whole person. What else is there except the whole? Can you tell me, David, from that moment on, at that event when you had that realization, what were your next steps from there to become the number one ranked in Google, and how long did that journey go, and how hard was it?
I love that. I love that question. It gives me a chance to go back into history and relive those early steps. Well, one of the first things that happened is because I thought this is great. I want to be a coach, but it took me a year to get around to it. The universe had to nudge me again because I was busy doing other things. I decided to go and be an entertainer in pubs and parties and even on television. So I was playing my guitar and doing that. But then I met a man who was in a coach training program. Mm-hmm. And this was back in 1998. And I was like, wow, I've been thinking about that for a year. How about I hire you and I'll be your practice client. I'll pay you $25 a week and I'll learn how to coach by watching what you do. And he said, okay, you're on. And then I had someone come and audition to be my singer in my duo for the band. Mm-hmm. And she was having some issues in life. And I said, hey, I'm just starting a coaching practice. How about you being my first practice client? I'll charge you $25 a week. And she's like, okay, great. So now I had this deal going on, and he would do his first session with me. So then I knew what to do with my first session with her. And then she'd say, what about next week? What are we going to do next week? I said, wait and see, because I hadn't had my second session with him yet. I didn't know what to do.
Yes.
So that's how I started. And then I went and found a man who was running a coach training program. I had coffee with him and he said, you know what? I believe in you. I'm going to gift you this $2,000 training program. And I know you'll pay me back in some way. So I started working for him and helping him build his coaching business. And meanwhile, I got the free training. And then let's see what was next. I was building the business, learning how to do it. Oh, and then I hired one of the top coaches in Australia because I figured if I really want to be good and I really want to accelerate, I can't be reinventing the wheel and stumbling here. I want to go fast. So I hired one of the top coaches and she trained me. She helped me to learn how to speak for clients. I didn't know anything about it. So she's coaching me and my mentor was also coaching me. And I went around to the local clubs like Rotary Club and Lions Club and speakers clubs and any club that was looking for a speaker. and here I am at the age, I think I was 28 now. And I'm telling 50-year-old people about, how to have life be better. It was pretty awkward because I hadn't lived a lot. Yeah. But I got a lot of clients that way. And then I started working on the internet because I'm a geek, I'm a nerd, I'm very left-brained. And I'm like, wait a minute, how does this search engine stuff work? So I looked it up and I went and did some search optimization on my site. And I was Like back then, 𝗷𝗲𝗄𝗏 was big, Yahoo was big, Google was just getting started. And I was number 1, 3, and 7 on the major search engines. I was all over that thing. In fact, you know, I had at least one person complain to the search engines, like, this guy's dominating. He shouldn't be listed 3 times in the top 10. And I got a lot of my clients that way. I ended up coaching. I had clients in 13 different countries. I was and working on the phone because we didn't have enough bandwidth for video back then. This was back in, oh my goodness, I guess this is back in 2000, 2001, 2002. And so it took me about 3 years, to answer your question, to get from beginning as a coach to being number 1 on Google and really starting to build my email list. And I think it was about the 2 or 3 year mark that I went into product, because I was having a lot of coaches come to me and say, how do you do this? We want to become a coach. How did you do it? How do we do it? And I ended up writing a book called The Coach Start Manual on how to build your practice, because I was saying the same thing over and over and over again to people. I wanted to be able to put that into a product. So that's how I got started in the industry.
It's truly intriguing. David, is there any major setback that you had during that time? Something that made you think, what on earth am I doing here? Why did I choose to do that?
Oh, that's a good one. Any big setback? Well,
or were you 100% laser focused, this is what I want to do, and any adversities, you just fought them?
Well, that's a really great question. You know, I realized that I think for many years in my coaching industry, I did not have major setbacks. I kept on building. The email list was building. I ended up creating 10 to 15 different products. Clients were pouring in. I was getting television appearances. I think the first big setback I can remember was when I published my book. So I put $150,000 into creating that book and publicizing it. I had people lined up all around the world to help me promote it. Millions of email addresses lined up and promised. And I hired a company to help me launch the book and raise money for charity. And on the back end, we were going to sell a training program that was supposed to make a lot of money. And on the day of the launch, people were lined up waiting to get into the server to get the prizes, to get the book and get all the special prizes and to get the training program. And I'd paid for someone to reinforce the server so that it wouldn't crash with all the traffic. Oh, the server crashed.
Oh.
The server crashed. And this wasn't like, oh, just go sometime in the next 5 days and get your gift. It was like, no, line up, because the first 100 people get this. The first 50 people get this. The first 5 people get this. The first 1,000 people get this. So when the server crashed, people just figured, oh, I've missed it. After 2 weeks of build-up, I must have missed it. Someone else got the prizes. So it was a terrible result. And I remember being on the floor of my bedroom, crying, just sobbing with the release of everything I'd put into it, and then the fact that the whole thing failed. That was lousy. So that was a horrible experience. And I think after that, I felt burned out. I'd been coaching coaches for so long, and I think I'd said everything I wanted to say. So it wasn't juicing me up anymore. And I just felt burned out. So I drifted away from my own company. I did do one final hurrah with a live event, and Jack Canfield from Chicken Soup came and spoke at that event. And I'm glad I did that. But that too, I call that the second setback. I put so much into this event. I got 100 people into the theater, 3 days, trained them, and then I offered them a big product at the end. almost no one bought it. It was just like I made a loss on the whole event, and I was so crushed again to have put so much into it. So I moved to Bali. I drifted away. I found a place in the rice paddies, and I largely stopped coaching clients. I had a few on the side just to have a little money coming in. And basically, I was semi-retired there in Bali. And it wasn't until the universe kicked me out of my comfortable nest. I had an event in Bali and I had to leave, and I had to leave in a hurry. And then when I left Bali, I was like, who am I? What am I going to do with my life? I'm just a bit lost here. And fortunately, a good friend of mine said, you're a really good coach and you stopped coaching. Why don't you go back to serving people with coaching? So I did. And it was just a matter of working out who am I going to help and what am I going to help them with? And which brings me here to you today.
Thank you for sharing that, David. And the reason why I asked was because, as you know, sometimes people tend to see or to focus on who someone is right now, and they disregard all the struggles, all the obstacles, all the challenges that this person has overcome in order to reach there. So it's always interesting to see, you know, some of those moments on the journey being overcome and not giving up like unfortunately some people do when
Yeah. Well,
adversities happen.
yes. And, you know, I feel in a way that I did give up. Um, after the live event, you know, I thought, all right, let's see what I can do with this. Let's see if I can sell from the stage, because I'd sold successfully from the stage from someone else's stage. I'd been on stage and sold $337,000 worth of product in 15 minutes.
Wow.
So I'm like, I know how to do this. Well, no, it seems like 3 days I'd given them too much information, overloaded them with information, and they're like, well, I'm just going to go out and implement what you gave me.
Yeah.
You know, I hadn't done it correctly. So I did kind of give up. I'm like, I'm so done with this. I haven't done another live event. I've done Zoom events, but I haven't done a live event since then. So I want to be honest here. I think I did kind of give up on that. And you could say I gave up on working with coaches, but at the same time, I think I really was done. It was time for me to move to another niche. So now, when I had to think, who do I love working with? I love working with entrepreneurs. It's so fun. You know, entrepreneurs have got so many different balls they're juggling. And so they usually feel scattered and overwhelmed. And I can relate to that because I am an entrepreneur. So I love helping them focus and sure, make more money. Everyone wants more money, so we'll do that. Let's have more time off. That's the second freedom I want people to have. And then the third freedom is emotional freedom. I want all of my clients to be fully self-expressed so that they ask for what they want. If they've got tolerations, they handle that. If they want someone to be a client, they go out and ask, hey, would you like to be a client? I've got something great that might really serve you. If they want a celebrity to endorse their product, they don't let fear run them. They have full emotional freedom to be themselves. And that's what really excites me. But we usually start with more money and more time off.
Yeah, these are probably more measurable rather than the emotional freedom. Is hard to put a number on it, but I think it's much more important. David, shall we talk then about the promise that I mentioned earlier about the having 30% more, being 30% more courageous, and how this really is a game changer. So, can you tell me your initial comments on that, and then I have some more specific questions I want to ask you.
Yeah, sure. And I'll tell you why I think courage is so important. If we stay in our comfort zone and we only do the things that we know we can do, then we tend to live a smaller life. And you just got to watch the movies that feel good, the inspirational movies. They're full of courage, people taking risks. And
Yeah.
we respect that when someone else does it. We respect it when we do it. And I've found that when I don't screw up my courage and do something that I'm afraid of, I feel small and I have regret. I regret, oh, that I didn't go and ask that woman out. And now she's gone. She's left the bar. It's too late. Or regret that I didn't stand up to that person and say, hey, that doesn't feel good. I'm going to ask you not to do that. Or, hey, I just noticed you threw a cigarette butt down on the ground. Would you be willing to pick it up? This place would be so much nicer without the trash. And if they don't pick it up, hey, I'll go and pick it up. All right, no big deal. But just, I regret the times that I didn't speak up or I didn't follow my courage. And I don't want any of our listeners, when it comes time to be on their deathbed, to go, oh, I could have done more. I should have done more. I should have spoken my truth. I want them to say, I gave it everything. I really fully lived. Now, to do that, we need to get out of our comfort zone, and that's going to take courage. I think a lot of people say, oh, I want to wait until I'm fully comfortable and then I'll do it. Well, you might be dead before you do that. It's going to take feeling awkward. Now, I'll give you a micro example, because there are macro examples and then micro examples. A micro example might be you think taking a cold shower might be a good idea because you might have heard about all the benefits of cryotherapy and having a positive shock to the system. But you're scared of the cold water, right? And I'm talking about myself here. I'm scared to get under a cold water shower. That's an example of where it will take some courage initially for you to step under that cold water and to take the shock of that shower. Now, after you've done that, say 10, 20, 50 times, it's not going to take courage anymore. The brain's not even thinking about it. The brain's like, all right, we just turn it on, we get under, we go, and then we let it wash over the body, and we're probably thinking about something else, what we're going to have for lunch. It's like that too with life. Let's take a macro example. At the big picture, some of the scariest things I've done are stepping off a mountain with a paraglider strapped to my back, which is like a parachute. I've stepped off a mountain in Nepal solo. This is not with an instructor attached to me. And I've gone up to 10,000 feet above sea level. Now, that takes a lot of courage. My heart's pounding. If you watch me, you go, wow, look how brave he is. Well, I'm also nearly peeing my pants, how scared I am. In fact, once I went on national television to play guitar in a kilt. It was like a gong show, and I literally peed my pants just a little bit. I think 3 drops of urine came out. That's how terrified I was. And I went out and I did it. National television, sang the song, played the guitar. So these now, what's the benefit of that? What's the benefit of jumping off a mountain or walking out on national television? I think the main benefit was teaching myself that if I can do that, I can do some of the other things that are more practical. And some of the things are more practical. And I'll use a business owner example. You might want someone to write the foreword to your book. Like right now, I'm writing a book called Name That Mouse, and I'd like a big name to write the foreword. So I've reached out to John Gray like 4 or 5 times, haven't gotten a yes so far, but from Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, but I haven't given up. And I reached out to Susan Campbell, who wrote a book called Getting Real, and she's an amazing woman. She just said yes. I'm like, all right, wow. Now that took some courage to reach out and possibly get a no. So look, whether you own a business or you have a job, I recommend, here's an exercise. Now, I know you told me before we hit record, you want practical tips. Get a piece of paper and at the top write, what would I do if I was fearless? And put a line down the middle of the paper. On the left side of the paper, this is business stuff. This is career stuff. What would you do if you were fearless? I would ask Richard Branson to write the foreword to my book. I would go and speak to a local organization, maybe on Zoom now during the pandemic. I would call these 10 people and ask them if they want to be a client or a customer. I would speak to my assistant about her being late to Zoom calls and ask her to be on time, right? And then on the right-hand side, what would you do in your life if you were fearless? And here's a great place to think about relationships. You might ask for something in the bedroom with your partner. You might ask somebody out on a date. There's probably someone, if you're single, there's probably someone in your life that you've thought, hey, we could be good together. I might just ask them if they're interested in exploring that. That takes courage. So once you've got your list, you don't have to do everything on that list. You don't have to do anything on that list. This is about you, your self-expression, your personal growth. I'm just recommending you be 30% more courageous and try it out for the next 30 days. So on that list, circle some things. Maybe don't circle the biggest thing. Maybe you don't go and confess to having an affair to your partner. You might tackle that stuff later. Circle some things that you are willing to do that would just fit into 30% more courageous, and then go and do them. Now, you might be thinking, oh yeah, but they're going to say no, or it's not going to work. Yeah, maybe it won't. This exercise isn't about that. It's mainly about you feeling good about yourself and feeling proud of yourself. It's a bonus if the people say yes. When Jack Canfield said yes to writing the foreword to my book, I was stunned. So was everybody else. People who knew him said he just decided not to do that because he was writing too many forewords. I can't believe he said yes to you. Woohoo! I was stunned, and so was everyone else when Jack said he'd come and speak at my live event. His friends were saying, how did you get him to do that? I said, I asked. It was scary. It was terrifying, but I asked. So pick a few things and commit to a time frame for each of them, and then put them in your calendar. This is when I'll do it. Do one of them today. It's a bit of a rush, Agi, when you start with one thing and then you get it done, and particularly if you get a positive result, like, oh, that tough conversation wasn't hard at all. I'm going to take the second thing on my list, and now I'm going to do the third thing on my list. You might end up doing all of them. Be careful.
This is amazing. Thank you for that. And one thing I wanted to comment on, you were talking about courage, and it isn't courage. It's indeed when you take the action despite the fear that you have. And you were talking about the cold showers earlier. Personally, I've been having cold showers for a few years now, pretty much every single day. So it is a matter of really training your mind to take the uncomfortable action. It doesn't matter what happens. It is conditioning the mind that this is it, I'm going to do it. And it is like a muscle. The more you train it, the more you can tackle the big uncomfortable things. Because if you can't, if you don't dare to turn the tap to cold water, what will you do if some major inconvenience happens your way? What will you do then? You will probably take the easy solution. So I think that's an important thought that came to my mind when you were talking about courage.
I totally agree. It's there's a movie called The Truman Show with Jim Carrey, and warning, if you haven't watched it, there's a spoiler alert right now, so you might want to cover your ears. for the next 30 seconds. Yeah, if you've watched the show, in that show, he doesn't even know about the boundaries in his life. There are physical walls to his life, and he just lives in his own world. And the movie's about him busting out of that and finding new frontiers and pushing things back. And I think that's what courage is for. Okay, and he has to screw up a lot of courage and get past like a nuclear accident and get past a storm and get past all things that it looked like it could kill him. For us, it's not that bad. It's more just made up fears like, oh, someone's just going to say no to me, or this is going to be an uncomfortable conversation. Yes. And I don't want to be uncomfortable. So you're absolutely right. You're training yourself when you have a cold shower, when you do something uncomfortable. When I was working with an energy coach, and that coach would have me in the morning look out at the snowfields, from my warm house, strip down to my boxer shorts, my underwear, and walk out bare feet and take 72 steps in the snow. Now, I didn't know that was possible. I thought you could really hurt your feet and be like a lot of pain, and because my brain's just saying you don't stand bare feet in the snow, but you really can. You got to do 72 steps, and yeah, after 72 steps, my feet are pins and needles and quite a bit of pain. But then I also learned that fades so fast, like within 10 seconds, 20 seconds, that fades. So now when I do it, I'm not afraid at all. I like it. I feel like a badass. I'm like, all right, here I am walking around in my underwear. I would never also have just walked out in the snow, in the cold. But if you're only doing it for 60 seconds and you know that your skin is supposed to contract and get goosebumps and whatever, it's just normal. It's the new normal. And that's what I want for all our listeners, is to work out your discomfort zone, not mine, not Augie's. Like, okay, big thing for me might be jumping off a cliff with a paraglider. Maybe a big thing for you is having a conversation with someone that could be a little bit awkward. So you work out your discomfort zone, and as a practice, as almost a religion, I invite you to constantly pick things, circle things on that list and say, all right, today I do that. Take a deep breath, I go into it, and it'll go however it goes.
David, you mentioned just now about the conversation, and I wanted also a comment from the tough conversation, and I wanted a comment about that from you as well. It's also the title of your podcast, but my question was, what is it about those tough conversations that makes us avoid doing them, and why is it so important to go on the other side and have these conversations?
Well, just as I mentioned the Truman Show earlier, the tough conversations that we have not had form the boundaries of our world. Just like the Truman Show, he had physical walls that he didn't even know about. Well, we have boundaries that we don't even know about. And they lie just at the edge of our discomfort zone. So we're creatures of comfort, right? We want our, I'm having this interview with you. I didn't have time to make my cup of tea this morning. So there's a part of my brain going, oh, that would be so nice to have it. Oh, poor David doesn't have his cup of tea. I'm just drinking water right here. When we're on a plane, we're complaining that the seat doesn't go back far enough, right? There's not enough recline on the thing. We're in the sky. We're in the air, flying like a bird, but it's our comfort that bothers us. So we have, and I include myself in this, we have become slaves to our comfort. And what that means is if something possibly awkward comes up, like someone threw a cigarette butt down on the ground, or someone's late for me, or my assistant is made a mistake again and I want to hold them accountable, but I don't want it to feel awkward. we tend to just avoid those things. In fact, our brain is so good at helping us avoid those things, it won't even bring it up. It won't even say, hey, you could talk to your partner about this. You know, your kids seem to be not interested in you anymore because, you know, they're teenagers going through a phase, and I'd love to connect with them, but I don't know how. There's a tough conversation, right? So I think it's so, just as it's important to take a cold shower or do some kind of a practice to train your brain, I think it's critical to have those tough conversations, because if you're willing to speak your truth, one, you can feel better about yourself. I like myself more when I speak my truth. Okay, that's one benefit. Second benefit, you are modeling good behavior for the entire planet. When you go to someone and say, hey, can I talk to you about this? You know, I feel a little bit awkward about that thing that you said. I just had one last night with my men's group. We were supposed to meet last week. Nobody showed up. Group of 4 men. Okay, I showed up. I get points. But no one showed up. One guy thought it was going to be another night. Another guy took some medication, had a bad effect. And then the other guy saw the message right at 7 o'clock when it's time to join. He's like, all right, let's cancel it. I'm going to go back to work. I'm sitting there. I'm like, what? There's a tough conversation. Now, if I don't have it, if I don't bring it up with the men and share the impact and maybe make a request, then I'm going to stay resentful.
Yeah.
I'm going to resent those guys. That's going to be in between us for the rest of my life, probably. Even if I forget about it consciously, it's going to be there subconsciously. So it wasn't a tough conversation because these guys are operating at a very high level. So I just said, I want to share some impact. This is how it felt for me. And I have decided to let it go. So, you know, I trust you guys were doing your best, and I've let it go. But for an hour or two, I was like, I'm pissed. I'm mad at these guys.
Yeah.
So I got to be, now I am fully complete because I got to express it with these guys. If I had a request, I would have made it like, hey, I request that you do something differently or whatever. But I'm like, look, I just trust you guys are doing your best. I've said my piece. I'm going to let go of it now. And it's done. Another reason to have a tough conversation is because you might get a result that you want. There might be something like you might want your staff to do better. You might want them to be more accountable. You might want them to, you know, I just had one of my assistants made like 2 or 3 mistakes in an email. I'm like, hey, are you okay? I want to first check if you're okay. It's not like you to make this many mistakes. So I check for that. What can you do to increase the quality of the email so there aren't so many mistakes? So that's a bit of a tough conversation. Now I get the result that I want, that he's like aware of the problem and he realizes he needs to step up a little bit for that. So I'm such a fan of tough conversations. I know as soon as I say tough conversations, some people switch off. They're like, oh, I don't want to have tough conversations. That sounds terrible. That sounds awkward. Well, let's call them conversations in the discomfort zone. They can produce such amazing results. You know, you might say to a friend, you know, I've been, you know, wishing that we were more connected. We only talk once every 2 years and I miss you. Maybe the friend says, wow, I've been feeling the same, but I didn't want to say anything.
Yeah.
And then, oh, now we're connected. Even if, regardless of what we decide, we're more connected. Then if we decide we're going to talk every 6 months instead of every 2 years, we get a result on top of that.
That's fantastic. Thank you, David. This is very useful. I would like to also ask you some quick fire questions to start wrapping this conversation up. So
Okay.
my first one always is, what does personal development mean to you?
Becoming more aware of our own operating system. So we are machines, we are programmed, and we're great machines, but I think personal development is what it's like the Matrix in the movie, The Matrix, is learning to see the Matrix. Oh, that's why I'm doing that. Oh, that's why I'm fighting for that. Oh, I could have done that so much kinder to that person. It's learning how to come to peace as well.
I love this, learning to see the matrix. If you could go back in time and meet the 18-year-old David, what's the one piece of advice you would give him?
I would say there are going to be times when you don't know if you're going to make it. You literally don't know if you're going to live. You might feel things are so intense and you're just worried that your anxiety, depression, you're going to worry, you're going to have a nervous breakdown. You don't know what your limits are. You're stronger than you think. You are going to learn. You are going to get through it until the point where you do actually die. But you've got a lot more capacity than you think. So if you want, and you remember this advice, you might be able to relax a little bit, even when it seems like things are so bad.
Let's say you had a magic wand and you could change it and you could wave it and change something in the world as it is today. What would you change? I
Wow.
see a smile.
Yeah, I'm smiling because the first thing that came up as a selfish thought, I'd want to change something for myself first. I'd want to change my nervous system so that it's not so jumpy when I hear noise, and I can sleep in the same bed as somebody else. And I'm just more robust and able to be more social, because it's a bit awkward for me sometimes to be social. I'd like to be able to connect with the world more. That's what I would choose for myself. If I get to choose for the world, and yes, this would take priority. If I could only choose one, I would choose this. That people come to like themselves more. That each person on the planet comes to like themselves more, even maybe in the direction of loving themselves. I think that would be a good thing for the planet. It's what I want for myself. It's what I want for my clients. It's what I want for the world.
Absolutely. David, emerging from this conversation, can you give to the listener one more actionable item? I know you gave that exercise earlier, which was earlier. Give us one more, please.
Yeah, I will. I give you one or two. If you want, look, if you have goals, if you don't have goals, firstly, get some good goals.
Yeah.
That light you up. So that'll be your first tip. 12 months out, what would have you do the happy dance? Like you would celebrate your ass off if you achieve these things. That's step one. Step two, every single week, I invite you to look at those goals and decide what you will accomplish over the next 7 days. So you book a CEO date with yourself, because you are your own boss. Book that date with yourself for 20 minutes. Put that in your calendar. Friday, 4 o'clock, Sunday, 4 o'clock, Monday, 9 a.m. You choose.
Yeah.
Let's call that step two, booking that CEO date. And then what you will do during that date of 20 minutes is you will celebrate what you achieved over the last 7 days, and you will choose your goals for the next 7 days. This is what I will care about. And this is very important. This is what I will not care about for 7 days. Now, if I achieve everything on my list, I can pull some other goals out of the drawer. But this is my focus. It's a game changer. So we'll call that step two, the CEO date, to choose the 7-day goals. And the last step I'll give you, and then all the rest of the steps are on a PDF, which I'm happy to give away to listeners.
Sure.
It's a checklist on how to double your productivity this year. The third step is book sprints into your calendar. And a sprint is a dedicated period of time. I like 2 hours. You might do 1 hour, you might do 4 hours. I like 2 hours, good chunk of time. Book, say 3 or 4 of them every week into your calendar. And when it's time for that sprint, you turn off all distractions. No one can get to you. No device can get to you, no pings, no nothing. And you sit down and you just do whatever goal you've set for yourself for that sprint. It'll probably be something from your 7-day goals, but this is where you get focused attention and you're going to get your best work done during those times. So those I think those will come to 3 practical tips. There are 10 on the checklist and they're all important. So I highly encourage you to get that download.
Absolutely. David, where will you direct people who want to find out more about you? I'll put the link to the checklist in the show notes as well.
Yeah, sure. I created a memorable link that's very easy for you. And at that link, you can get the PDF download for doubling your productivity. And also, if you have a business, I have an amazing training, which I will gift to you. It will help you work out which of the 9 areas that are critical for doubling revenue that you are strong in and which areas you are terrible in. Those are the areas that you want to work on first. Because a plan for one person is not the same as a plan for another person. So it's a really great training on doubling revenue. And you can get both of those things and also see if you're a fit for my 8-week samurai program where I take business owners by the hand and help them double their revenue and their time off. You can do all 3 of those things at myfocusgift.com. I wanted to give you the gift of focus. So what better domain for that? myfocusgift.com, take you straight to my website.
That's awesome. Thank you. David, thank you so much for this conversation today. It was truly fascinating, and I got some elements myself from this, which is I appreciate it very much. I want to wish you all the very best with your work and your life. Any last parting words?
Yes, you seem like a very warm, wonderful, and inviting man, and I'm really glad to know you.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and rate it on Apple Podcasts. And also share this episode with someone who you think will benefit from it. If you want to find out more about what I do and gain access to exclusive content, join my Facebook group Personal Development Mastery. The link is in the show notes, or you can simply type bit.ly/PDM group. And until next time, stand out, don't fit in.